It's Fired Off Friday, and welcome to the Bad Influence Podcast with yours truly, Bjordan Banderas. Listen to what I must tell you today because it can change your perspective about speed. The person who keeps looking for the faster way has usually already passed the moment that would have made them great. You know the shortcut mindset. You've been living inside it. I know I have. Maybe longer than you want to admit. And that's totally fine. The search for the strategy that skips the suffering. The system that produces the result without the process. The path that gets you to the destination without asking too much of the person making the journey. And it feels smart. It feels efficient. It feels like the reasonable behavior of someone who has learned from watching others waste years on approaches that could have been condensed. But be honest right now. What have the shortcuts actually produced? Not the ones you found, the results they delivered, the lasting ones. The ones that compound, the ones that still feel like yours 5 years after they arrived. How many of those came from a shortcut? And how many came from the work that was too slow and too hard and too uncertain to feel like anything other than suffering while you were inside it? Good questions, right? Because there's a truth that the shortcut culture has been very careful not to say directly. The thing you bled for don't just produce different outcomes. They produce a different you. The person who comes out the other side of a real process, who earned the result through the full cost of getting it, that person is not the same as the one who found the faster path. They carry something in them that the shortcut cannot replicate. Not just the skill, not just the knowledge, the specific, bone-deep certainty of someone who knows what they're made of because they found out the hard way. And that certainty, that unshakable self-knowledge, is the thing the shortcut permanently denies you. You can get the result without it, but you cannot keep the result without it. I know, right? Because keeping anything worth having requires the person who earned it, not the person who found the faster path to it. And probably you have seen this with some influences out there. So be honest about what you've been chasing. Not the thing itself, the version of getting it that asks the least of you. The course that promises the outcome without the reps. There's a lot of those out there. The strategy that claims to compress what actually takes time. There's a lot of out there as well. The approach that lets you skip the part where you have to find out who you are when it gets hard. Oh, I've been through that. And every shortcut you've taken has left you with a result that felt thinner than it should have. Not because the result was wrong, because you weren't fully built for it yet. And somewhere in your chest, you knew it. You knew it. Here's the thing. The shortcut mindset didn't arrive fully formed. It was built in response to something specific, in an environment that made the long way feel like a punishment rather than a path. So let's find where it started. Because the pull toward easier, faster, less costly didn't come from laziness. It came from somewhere that made genuine effort feel unsafe or pointless or simply unavailable. Think about the first time you work hard, really hard, with full investment, and the result didn't match the effort. Not a minor disappointment. The specific deflation of having given everything and watching it not be enough. And in that moment, before the reasoning started, before the story got built around it, something concluded in you. The full effort is not reliable. The process doesn't guarantee the outcome. And if the process doesn't guarantee the outcome, why pay the full cost? That conclusion made complete sense given what produced it. It was the logical response of a person who got burned by full investment and decided to protect against that burn going forward. But the protection created a pattern, a habit of approaching the next pursuit with less than everything, with a portion held back as insurance against the possibility of another full effort going unrewarded. And held back effort produces held back results, which confirm the original conclusion. The full effort isn't worth it anyway. And the cycle sealed itself. Oh, yes, it did. Or maybe the origin is different. Maybe you grew up in an environment where the shortcuts were the culture, where the people around you moved through life finding the angles, the faster paths, the side doors, the approaches that looked like intelligence but were actually the avoidance of the full process. And it worked well enough that the lesson got absorbed. Right? I know that happened to me. Why do it the hard way when the easier way produces roughly the same result? But roughly the same result is the key phrase nobody examined, because roughly the same looks identical from the outside and feels completely different from the inside. The person who took the shortcut and the person who paid the full cost, they can end up at the same destination and be fundamentally different people inside it. And nobody told you that. Yeah, nobody told you that. Nobody showed you the difference between arriving somewhere earned and arriving somewhere found. So you learned the angle, refined the approach, got the vision of finding the path of least resistance, and built a life full of results that never quite felt like yours. And believe me, your body will feel it. Or maybe the condition is more specific than either of those. Maybe the full process was genuinely not available to you at some point, because that happens. Maybe resources were limited, time was short, circumstances demanded efficiency over depth. And you adapted. Because that's what capable people do when the conditions require it. You found the faster way because the slower way wasn't an option. And the adaptation was right for that season. The problem is the season changed and the adaptation didn't. The resources are different now. The time is different. The circumstances no longer demand the shortcut. But the nervous system didn't get the update. It still fires the old instruction. Find the faster path. In situations where the slower, harder, more complete process is exactly what's available and necessary. Here's what a conditioning feels like in the body. When the full process presents itself, when the thing you want requires the real time and the real reps and the real suffering of becoming the person who can sustain the result, there is a physical resistance. Not reluctance exactly, a pulling away that happens before the mind has formed its first argument. A reach for the alternative, the course, the system, the strategy that promises compression, that fires automatically. And the body follows the reach before the reasoning catches up. That automatic reach is not laziness. It is a nervous system executing the protection program that was built for a different season. And it has been running in this season, where the full process is exactly what's needed, producing results that fell thin because they were built on a foundation the shortcut cannot provide. Think about the specific texture of the things you've earned the hard way. The ones that cause you real time, real discomfort, real uncertainty about whether the process will produce anything worth the price. Feel the difference between those and the things that came faster. Not in the external measure of them, in how they sit in your body, in whether they feel solid or provisional, in whether you hold them with certainty or with the low-grade awareness that the foundation might not be as deep as the results suggest. That difference is not imagined. It is the real, felt cause of the shortcut, and your body has been registering it every time, whether your mind has been willing to acknowledge it or not. Truth bomb. The shortcut has a physical cause, not just in the quality of what gets built, in the actual felt experience of living inside results that weren't fully earned. And your body has been registering that cause in ways you've been attributing to other things. Feel what happens when someone asks you about the thing you build the fast way. The thing that arrived through the compressed path rather than the full process. There is a specific quality to how you talk about it. A slight hedging, a careful framing, not lying, just not the full story. Because the full story includes how it got built. And how it got built doesn't quite match the weight of how it's being held up. And your body knows that. It registers the gap between the result and the foundation every time the result gets examined. As a tightness that arises when the questions get too specific. As a low-grade vigilance that lives underneath the presentation of success. That vigilance is exhausting in a way that genuine accomplishment never is. Because genuine accomplishment doesn't require maintenance. It just stands. Yeah, it just stands on its own. But results built on shortcuts require careful tending, careful framing, careful positioning, careful management of the gap between what looks true and what actually is. And the maintenance never fully rests. And you can see this with a lot of gurus on social media. Think about the specific feeling of watching someone who did it the hard way. Someone in your space who paid the full cost, who went through the actual process without compressing it, and now carries the result differently than you carry yours. There is something in how they speak about their work that lands differently. A groundedness, a lack of hedging, a certainty that doesn't require performance because it came from somewhere real. And when you encounter that, when you feel the contrast between their earned certainty and your carefully maintained confidence, something moves in your chest. Not jealousy exactly. Recognition. Your body recognizing the thing it was supposed to develop and didn't. Ooh, because the shortcut bypassed the process that would have produced it. And you know it. Think about the restlessness, the specific inability to fully settle into what you've built, the compulsion to keep moving to the next thing, the next level, the next result, not because you're genuinely ready for it, but because staying still with what's already here feels uncomfortable. That restlessness is not ambition. Ambition is directed. It knows what it's building toward and moves with purpose. This restlessness is evasion. Evasion. Movement away from the quiet that will require sitting with the gap between the result and the foundation it's sitting on. And the body keeps moving to avoid that sitting. Yes, it does. Think about your sleep on the nights when the work didn't ask enough of you. Not tired from genuine effort, just done with a day that produced output without depth. The specific hollow feeling of a day that was efficient but not meaningful. That hollowness is not about the quantity of what got done. It's about the quality of what got built or didn't get built in the person doing it. Because real effort builds something in you that efficient effort doesn't. Every hard rep adds a layer to the foundation. Every shortcut skips a layer. And the foundation with skip layers doesn't feel solid no matter how impressive the structure above it looks. Your body knows the difference between standing on something solid and standing on something that looks solid. Even when nobody else can see the difference. Even when the result is the same from the outside. The body always knows. And it has been sending you that signal through the restlessness, through the vigilance, through the hollow nights, for longer than you've been willing to receive it. Yeah, it's there. So, let's hold the mirror up all the way up. Because this is where we stop describing the pattern and start looking at what chasing shortcuts has actually cost you. Not in theory, in the specific, real, already happening consequences that show up in your work, your identity, and the life you're building. Let's start with the foundation. Everything you've built, every result, every achievement, every level you've reached sits on a foundation. And the foundation is only as deep as the process that built it. Surprise! Shortcuts produce shallow foundations. And shallow foundations have a specific vulnerability that deep ones don't. They hold in good conditions. They crack under real pressure. You have seen this probably. Think about the moments when something you built the fast way got genuinely tested. Oh yeah, we're going that deep. When the conditions got hard enough that the foundation had to carry real weight. What happened? Did it hold with the certainty of something built all the way down? Or did something shift? A crack, a wobble, a moment of exposure where the depth of the foundation became suddenly relevant. That shift is the shortcut's invoice arriving. Not when the result was built. Later. Always later. Always at the worst possible moment. When the conditions that would have been fine for a deep foundation become too much for a shallow one. Think about the skills you haven't developed because the shortcut bypassed the process that would have built them. A lot of people do this. Not the surface skills. The ones the shortcut taught you to perform. I'm not talking about that one. The deep ones. The ones that only come from going through the thing completely. The problem-solving capacity that comes from hitting the wall the long way and having to find your way through rather than around. The resilience that comes from a process that tested you before it rewarded you. The specific confidence that comes from knowing in the body, not just the mind, that you can handle whatever the pursuit throws at you because you've already handled the full version of it. Those skills are not in the shortcut. They never were. And their absence is a gap. Yeah, it's a gap you carry into every next level you attempt to reach. A gap that widens as the levels get higher and the pressure gets more real. A lot of you are feeling that pressure right now. So think about the opportunities that require the depth you didn't build. The room where the real players were and something in you knew before a word was spoken that you weren't fully ready for it. Not because you lacked intelligence, because the foundation hadn't been built all the way down. And you felt it. Yes, you did. In the slight hesitation before you spoke. That happens. In the careful management of how much you revealed about the process behind the result. In the low grade awareness that the room could see something you've been trying not to look at directly. That awareness is not imagined. That is accurate self-assessment operating in real time. And the shortcut created that gap. And the shortcut created the gap that produced it. Now, look at your self-respect. Not the external version, the internal one. Oh yeah, we're going inside. The private assessment you make of yourself when nobody's watching and no performance is required. How solid is it? Is it built on the evidence of having gone through things completely? Of having paid the full cost and come out the other side knowing what you're made of? Or is it built on results that arrive faster than the person who holds them was ready for? Because that also happens. Because self-respect built on earned results has a different density than self-respect built on efficient ones. The earned kind doesn't require external confirmation to stay solid. It just stands because the foundation under it goes all the way down. The efficient kind needs maintenance, needs the next result to reinforce it, needs the performance to keep running because the moment it stops, the gap becomes visible. It becomes visible. And you've been maintaining it. Yes, you've been maintaining it for longer than you like to admit. Keeping the performance running, adding the next result before the previous one gets examined too closely. Moving fast enough that the foundation question never gets to sit still long enough to be answered honestly. Now, look at what the shortcut is stealing from the people who depend on what you build. Because what you build doesn't just affect you. It affects the people who rely on it, who build on top of it, who trust that the foundation under what you've created is as deep as it looks. And shallow foundations don't just crack for the person who built them. That's not what happens. They crack for everyone standing on them. Think about that weight. The specific responsibility of building something that others will depend on, and the specific cost of building it on a foundation that shortcuts produce. That weight is real, and it belongs to you. Yes, it does. That belongs to you. Now, look at the version of yourself that the full process will have produced. Not just the result you will have reached. The person. The specific version of you that exists on the other side of having gone through something completely. Without the compression, without the bypass, without the careful management of the distance between effort and outcome. That version doesn't just have the result. That version is unshakable inside it. Carries it without vigilance. It speaks about it without hedging. That's right. It stands in rooms that test it without the low-grade awareness that the foundation might not hold. That version is not a fantasy. It is the direct product of a process you've been bypassing. And it has been waiting patiently, stubbornly, with more persistence than the shortcuts gave it credit for you to finally choose the long way. Not because the long way is romantic, because it is the only way that builds the person capable of sustaining what they build. Now, we build the right the real thing. Not the compressed version, the actual one. Because everything this episode has been pointing toward lands here, in the specific, daily, unglamorous decision to stop looking for the faster way and start building the deeper one. And that decision starts with one honest acknowledgement. The shortcuts weren't wrong because they were inefficient. They were wrong because efficiency is not the point. The point, the actual point of doing something worth doing, is what the doing produces in the person who does it. Not just the result. The person. And the person only gets built by the full process. Not the compressed version of it. Not the version that skips the suffering. That's right. Not that version. The version that asks everything. And through the asking, produces someone who has everything the result requires to be sustained. That is what the long way actually is. Not punishment, not inefficiency, not the approach of people who haven't figured out a better way. It is the only way that builds the person alongside the result. And I can attest to that. And a result without the person built to hold it is just a temporary position. Yours to occupy until the gap between the foundation and the structure becomes too wide to manage. So let's talk about what choosing the full process actually looks from here. Because it's not a complete restart. It's not throwing away everything built and beginning again from nothing. It's a shift in the standard applied to what gets built next. The standard that says, from this point forward, the process matters as much as the outcome. That the reps don't get skipped because skipping them is available. That the discomfort of genuine development doesn't get bypassed because a bypass exists. That the genuine time required to build something deeply gets given, actually given, without the constant scan for a way to compress it. That standard, applied consistently to everything built from here, produces something the shortcut never could. A body of work where the foundation matches the structure, where the depth of the person building it matches the height of what gets built, where the results don't require maintenance because they were built all the way down. Now, let's talk about what the full process actually feels like, because it has been misrepresented by a lot of people. It doesn't feel like suffering the whole way through. It feels like suffering in the places where growth is actually happening. And in between those places, in the spaces where the work is demanding but not destroying, it feels like something that the shortcut never produces. It feels like building, real building. The specific satisfaction of a person who is putting something together that will actually hold. That feeling is not available in the compressed path, because compression removes the spaces where the building feeling lives. It keeps only the outcome, removes the experience of becoming the person capable of it. And that experience, the becoming, is actually the most valuable part of the entire pursuit. More valuable than the result itself. Because the result can be lost. Markets shift, circumstances change. What was built can come apart, but the person built by the process cannot be taken. What you become through doing something the full way, the capacity, the resilience, the unshakable self-knowledge, that stays. To every market shift, to every circumstance change, to every moment when what was built comes apart. The person remains, and that person builds again from the foundation with the same depth, without the gap the shortcut left. That is what the full process actually gives you, not just the result. The person who can rebuild the result from anywhere. Now, let's talk about the standard. Yes, we got to that part. Not a goal, not an intention, a standard. You stop asking how to get there faster and start asking how to get there deeper. Every time the shortcut presents itself, every time a compressed path appears that bypasses part of the process, you ask one question before deciding. What does this path skip in me that the full process will have built? And you let the answer inform the decision. Not always refusing the efficient path, but never taking it without understanding what it costs in the person doing the taking. Because efficiency that costs you development is not efficiency. It is depth. Paid later, at the worst possible moment, when the foundation gets tested by conditions it wasn't built for. You are done taking on that debt. Not because shortcuts are always wrong. Because you've finally done the honest accounting of what they cost. And the cost is too high for what they deliver. The results without the person? Yeah, those kind of results. The position without the foundation? Yeah, that kind of position. The destination without the becoming that makes the destination worth arriving at. That's what I'm talking about. You want the whole thing. The result and the person built to hold it. The destination and the becoming that makes arriving there feel like it was always yours. And the whole thing requires the whole process. Not compression, not bypass, no careful management of the gap between effort and outcome. Just the work. They're done completely over the time it actually takes by the person it is actually building. That is the identity from this moment forward. Not someone who finds the faster way. Someone who chooses the deeper one. Not because they haven't found the shortcut. Because they understand what the shortcut costs and have decided the cost is not worth paying anymore. And if this episode hit something real, if something in here name the thing feeling of shortcut build results and show you what the full process actually produces, hit that subscribe button. Because every single Friday, we come back to this exact standard. The standard of someone who bleeds for what they build because they know what you bleed for hits different than everything that came easy. And different is exactly what they're after. This is not a podcast for people who want the result without the process. This is a podcast for people who are ready to understand that the process is the point. And that what comes out the other side of doing something completely is worth more than anything the shortcut ever delivered. Think about the things you've bled for. The real ones. The ones that cost you time you didn't have, and comfort you didn't want to lose, and certainty you couldn't access because the process doesn't come with guarantees. Feel how those things sit in you compared to everything that came easier. Feel the difference in their weight, their solidity, the way you carry them without vigilance. The way they feel permanently yours in a way that efficient results simply don't. That feeling is not nostalgia. That is accurate data about what the full process actually produces. And it is available again, right now, in the next pursuit, in the next thing you decide to build, if you choose the full way. If you stop asking how to compress it and start asking how to go all the way through it. If you let the process build the person alongside the result, without rushing the building, without bypassing the suffering, without managing the gap between what you want to present and what the foundation actually supports. The things you bleed for hit different. That's not a motivational line. That is the most accurate description of what it feels like to hold something you actually earn. And you know the difference. Yes, you do. You felt both sides of it. The thin result and the solid one. The maintained confidence and the earned certainty. The position that requires vigilance and the foundation that just stands. You know. Yes, you know which one you want. You've always known. Yes, you have. Don't lie to yourself. The shortcuts were never about not knowing. They were about the gap between what you wanted and what you were willing to go through to get it. And that gap is closing right now. In this decision, in this standard, in the next pursuit you approach with a full commitment to the full process. No compression, no bypass, no search for the faster path. Just the work done completely over the time it takes by the person it is building. That person is already in you, has been in you the whole damn time, waiting for you to stop looking for the shortcut around the process that will let them fully emerge. They emerge through the reps you don't skip, through the discomfort you don't bypass, through the time you give instead of compress, through the suffering you move through instead of around. Every full rep is another layer of foundation. Every bypass shortcut is another layer of the person built to hold what gets built above it. And what gets built on that foundation, on the real one, the deep one, the one that goes all the way down, that stands through everything the conditions throw at it. Because the person who built it was built by the building. All the way down. No gap between the structure and the foundation that holds it. And I want you to remember something. After listening to this episode, remember that the choice to do this, to make the changes, to set the necessary standards or create the necessary standards, and to move forward fully committed, fully in the process, and fully deciding to make it through the hard times is yours.